It was a cold night in Ravenshire, a quiet town where people knew each other by name. On Valentine's Day, a young woman named Melora Vance went missing. She was last seen at the town diner, laughing with her best friend, Lyle Wren. But when the sun rose, Melora was gone. No call. No note. Just an empty seat where she once sat. Where did she go? Her mom, Fern Vance, called the police when Melora didn't come home. Officer Wade Clifton led the search, but there was no trace of her. Not a single clue. People whispered. Some said she ran away. Others thought something worse had happened. Then a shocking clue appeared. Melora's red scarf was found near the frozen lake, but the ice was unbroken. While searching Melora's room, Fern found something strange, a letter. It was tucked inside her drawer, sealed with a red heart. The words inside made Fern gasp. "Meet me by the lake at midnight. I have something to tell you." It had no name. Who wrote it? Officer Clifton spoke with Lyle, who swore he knew nothing about the note. But his face turned pale when he saw it. "She never told me about this," he said. His voice shook. Was he hiding something? That night, the town held a search party by the lake. They found another clue, Melora's necklace, broken and lying in the snow. Someone had been there. But who? Ravenshire was a small town, so new faces stood out. A week before Melora vanished, a man named Curtis Harlan arrived. He rented a room at the old motel, never spoke much, and always wore gloves. People whispered about him. Officer Clifton checked the motel records. Curtis paid in cash. No ID. No credit card. Suspicious. When asked about Melora, Curtis smirked. "Never met her," he said. But why did his name appear in Melora's journal, underlined twice? A townsperson, Ida Fenn, claimed she saw Curtis near the lake that night. But he denied it. "I was asleep," he said. Lyle confessed something to the police. The night before Melora disappeared, she seemed scared. "She told me she had a secret," he said. "Something big. But she wouldn't tell me what." Another clue surfaced. A worker at the diner found a napkin with Melora's handwriting. It said, "I know what you did." The ink was smudged, as if she had rushed to write it. Who was it meant for? Officer Clifton checked the diner cameras. One frame showed Melora looking over her shoulder, nervous. A shadowy figure sat 2 tables away. Curtis. A breakthrough came when Fern found a heart-shaped locket in Melora's desk. Inside was a tiny picture of her and someone unexpected, Curtis. Had she known him all along? Was he more than a stranger? Officer Clifton questioned Curtis again. This time, his hands shook. "I met her once, okay? But I didn't hurt her," he said. But his eyes told another story. Meanwhile, Lyle started acting strange too. He was missing from town for hours. When asked, he said, "Just needed air." But his hands had dirt under his nails. What was he hiding? If you love mystery stories, hit like, comment, and subscribe to Shadow Truths for more. Snow fell again, covering old tracks. But a hunter, Milo Crane, found something unusual near the lake. Footprints leading into the woods, but none coming out. As if someone vanished into thin air. The search party followed the tracks. They led to an abandoned barn. Inside, they found a single rose and a note. It was never about love. It was about revenge. Fern recalled something from years ago. When Melora was a child, she had an imaginary friend named Harlan. The name sounded familiar. Curtis Harlan. Could it be connected? Officer Clifton checked old records. Curtis once lived in Ravenshire years ago, under a different name. His family left after a tragedy. But why return now? And why target Melora? A shocking truth emerged. Curtis wasn't a stranger at all. He was the son of a woman who once worked for Fern. His mother had been blamed for theft and fired. She died soon after. Curtis never forgot. He had come back for payback. But why Melora? Then, a chilling discovery, a second love letter, hidden under Melora's bed. It read, "I know what you lost. Meet me at the barn." Curtis had lured her out. But where was she now? With Curtis missing, the police searched his motel room. Inside, they found a small box. It held another locket, identical to Melora's. Inside was a picture of a woman. Curtis's mother. The truth became clear. Curtis had taken Melora, believing Fern owed him a debt. But had he harmed her? Then, a final clue surfaced. A fisherman reported hearing someone crying near the old bridge. Could it be her? The police rushed to the bridge. There, tied to a tree, was Melora's scarf. Beneath it, footprints leading to the water's edge. But no body. Curtis was found an hour later, cold and weak. She got away, he muttered. But where was she? Then, a miracle. A woman was found walking along the highway, disoriented but alive. It was Melora. She had escaped, but barely. He wanted me to pay for something I never did, she said, shaking. Curtis was arrested. Melora recovered, but the scars remained. Love had turned dark, but justice was served. If you enjoyed this mystery, don't forget to subscribe to Shadow Truths for more real-life crime stories. Melora tried to forget the horror of that night, but the memories clung to her like a shadow. Every time she closed her eyes, she saw Curtis's face, his cold, vengeful eyes staring at her as she ran through the dark woods. The town considered the case closed, but Melora knew it wasn't over. Something about Curtis's arrest didn't sit right with her. Officer Clifton visited her at home, asking if she could recall any small details that might explain Curtis's motives. She hesitated but then mentioned something strange. Curtis had whispered, "It's not over," before he was taken away. Meanwhile, Fern found an old diary of Melora's from childhood. Inside, she had scribbled a name over and over again, Harlan. The same name Curtis had used. It made Fern question if Curtis had been closer to Melora's past than they realized. Then, a chilling discovery. Someone had left a single red rose on their doorstep with a note. Some secrets never stay buried. Officer Clifton decided to re-examine the case files, but when he checked the police records, something was missing. The initial report from Fern's 911 call the night Melora disappeared. Someone had erased it. Determined to find out who, Clifton questioned the station clerk, who admitted that a man had paid her to remove the report. When asked for a description, she hesitated before whispering, "He looked just like Curtis, but older." The revelation sent chills down Clifton's spine. Did Curtis have an accomplice? Or worse, was there another Harlan out there? Melora received a message that night from an unknown number. "You ran before. You won't run again." That same night, Melora spotted a figure lurking outside her window. She rushed to call Clifton, but by the time he arrived, the figure was gone. The only thing left behind was a footprint, a deep, heavy imprint in the mud. Whoever had been watching her was strong. Lyle Wren, who had been distant since the night of her disappearance, finally confessed something shocking. He had been following Curtis the week before Melora was taken. He met someone in the woods, Lyle admitted. A man in a gray coat. They argued. I couldn't hear what they said. Clifton released a town-wide alert. If there was another Harlan, they needed to find him before he struck again. A mysterious letter arrived at the police station. It contained one simple message. He was never working alone. The handwriting was familiar. Melora recognized it as her father's. But that was impossible. Her father had been dead for years. Desperate for answers, she and Fern searched through old family records. To their horror, they found something they had never known. Her father had a brother. A twin. His name? Samuel Harlan. Curtis wasn't the mastermind. He was just following orders. His uncle, the real force behind everything, was still out there. Watching. Waiting. Then, another text to Melora. Happy Valentine's Day. See you soon. The town's annual Valentine's festival was in full swing. Melora and Clifton knew Samuel would strike there. It was the perfect place to blend into the crowd. As music played and couples danced, Melora felt a presence behind her. A cold breath on her neck. You look just like her, a voice whispered. She turned slowly, heart pounding. A man stood before her, gray coat, piercing eyes. Samuel Harlan. Before she could scream, he grabbed her wrist. Your mother took everything from us. Now, it's your turn to lose. Clifton appeared just in time, gun drawn. Let her go. Samuel smirked. It was never about her. It was always about revenge. Then he lunged, but Melora, fueled by fear and rage, fought back. A struggle ensued. Samuel pulled a knife, but Clifton tackled him before he could strike. The crowd screamed. Officers swarmed in. As Samuel was handcuffed, he sneered. You think this is over? There are more of us. You'll never be safe. But for now, Melora was safe. As she stood in the middle of the festival, surrounded by light and music, she realized something. She had survived. And that was the greatest victory of all. If you loved this thrilling conclusion, don't forget to subscribe to Shadow Truths for more. The town of Ravenshire had returned to a fragile calm, but Melora couldn't shake the feeling that something was still off. The word Samuel had spoken haunted her. There are more of us. What did he mean? Who else was involved? That night, Melora's phone rang. An unknown number. Hesitant, she answered. A distorted voice whispered, "Did you think it was over?" Before she could respond, the line went dead. Officer Clifton traced the call, but it had been routed through multiple locations. Whoever was behind it was careful. Then, another twist. Samuel Harlan had escaped custody during his prison transfer. He had vanished without a trace. Melora started seeing someone in the shadows, watching her. She couldn't tell if it was paranoia or real danger. Lyle insisted she stay with him, fearing that Samuel, or someone else, was coming for her. One evening, Melora left work late. As she walked to her car, she saw a man leaning against it, his face hidden under a hood. He lifted his head just enough for her to see his smirk. It was Curtis. But Curtis was dead. Or so she thought. She ran back inside, locking the door behind her. By the time Clifton arrived, the man was gone. Melora and Clifton revisited the woods where Curtis used to meet the mysterious man in the gray coat. Hidden deep in the trees, they discovered an old house, abandoned but recently used. Inside, they found disturbing photographs of Melora taken over the years. Someone had been watching her for a long time. Then, the sound of footsteps. Someone was outside. Clifton drew his gun, but when they stepped out, there was no one there. Only a single message painted on the ground in red: "See you soon." With every clue, the truth started unraveling. Curtis had a twin brother, just like Melora's father. His name? Caleb Harlan. He had faked Curtis's death and orchestrated the entire plan from the shadows. Caleb had one goal: revenge for what happened to his family. He wanted Melora to suffer the same way his family had. As Clifton and Melora pieced everything together, another call came through. This time, it was Fern. "He's here," she whispered in terror. Racing home, Melora and Clifton arrived to find the door wide open. Inside, the lights flickered. A struggle had taken place. Fern was gone. A note on the table read, "Come alone, or she dies." The location? The same frozen lake where Melora's scarf had been found. Ignoring Clifton's warning, Melora went alone. There, she found Caleb holding Fern hostage. He smiled. "You should have left it alone." But before he could strike, Clifton arrived with backup. A final struggle ended with Caleb being arrested, screaming that it wasn't over. But for Melora, it finally was. Thanks for watching. Don't forget to like, share, and subscribe to Shadow Truths.